Williams and Lennox Smith.
Bang, 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 bang.
Andy Williams and Lennox Smith.
Bang, 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 bang.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
Alegría, alegría, que nació el Señor, para salvar el hombre, es su redentor. Entregue una a la Virgen María, Jesús el niño, el Rey del cielo.
En el comedero de aquel ganado, María parió el Dios soberano. En el comedero aquel ganado, María parió el Dios soberano.
Alegría, alegría, que nació el Señor, para salvar al hombre, es su redentor. Entregue una a la Virgen María, Jesús el niño, el Rey del cielo.
Nació un profeta en el pueblo de Belén, con una estrella en la frente para predicar el bien. Nació un profeta en el pueblo de Belén, con una estrella en la frente para predicar el bien.
Alegría, alegría, que nació el Señor, para salvar al hombre, es su redentor. Entregue una a la Virgen María, Jesús el niño, el Rey del cielo.
La Virgen María y el Santo José son los padres buenos de ese mío rey. La Virgen María y el Santo José son los padres buenos de ese mío rey.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
Alegría, alegría, que nació el Señor, para salvar al hombre, es su redentor. Entregue una a la Virgen María, Jesús el niño, el Rey del cielo.
12 de la noche nació el verdadero y lo bautizaron días hay de tener. 12 de la noche nació el verdadero
This is Caribbean Vibes.
Mother of our firstborn king conceived her first offspring, gave birth in Holy Land to this giant of a man. This is how she played her part by giving us a star. History books will all now show how much to her we owe. Maria. Maria. Sing Hosanna for King. In the highest let us sing. Maria, 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 Maria. He is our Savior. Let's anoint his head with oil and serenade our firstborn boy.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
With some frankincense and myrrh, the wise men went to her. They departed their own way, avoiding Herod as they say. Then Mary fled the land to Egypt, child in hand, avoiding Herod all the way, who destroyed children as they play. Maria. Maria. Sing Hosanna for King. In the highest let us sing. Maria, 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 Maria. He is our Savior. Let's anoint his head with oil and serenade our firstborn boy. Now the story goes to show the hardship mothers undergo by preserving her firstborn. Her light she also shone, even to the very end. A mother's love she lent, and now all is said and done, gave her only begotten son. Maria. Maria. Sing Hosanna for King. In the highest let us sing. Maria, 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 Maria. He is our Savior. Let's anoint his head with oil and serenade our firstborn boy.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
Yeah. Don't forget, it's very important. No matter what you do in this world, we got to remember the firstborn boy. In this time, more than ever, we should give praises and thanks to the man, Most High. Oh yeah. Maria. In the highest, let us sing. Maria, 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 Maria. He is our Savior. Let's anoint his head with oil and serenade our firstborn boy.
Report with Mikey K, Andy Williams, and Lennox Smith.
Sorry about that. I mean now. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm blessing good morning to all and sundry east, west, south, south, central, offensive Tobago, and wherever you are. Streaming on the world wide web of blessing good to you. Sorry about that. I thought I was called, but I was not called. And I'm here, so to speak. Yes, indeed, of course. Andy will be joining us momentarily. I have to take a early departure, so I thought I will make a early entrance, so you'll appreciate that. And of course, on a Friday, we try to address some of the issues that we may not have had time to, of course, because of the compact nature of the program, and all of this topic on any one day. Will not be able to be concentrated into 3 hours, but we do our best. And as I said, and I was saying, but I realized that I was soliloquizing, meaning that I was talking to myself because I was talking all the time and saying, well, we get up to 2 o'clock in the morning, read all the newspapers, and of course, I try to get all the news as possible. But sometimes, when we fall short because that topic may be raised that we may not be familiar with. But what we normally would do is, of course, we spend time and energy and knowledge acquisition as well as finance in expenditure, yes, in order to make certain that when we leave here on a daily basis, that the information is near perfect or so accurate that it is irrefutable. Nobody could argue with it. And therefore, if there's a topic that we are not familiar with, as you would have seen, we do at minimum two things. One, we consult, of course, Google or some other platform to get the information. And the other thing, of course, we pick up the phone the old traditional way, and we call the person who may be at the center of the particular issue and from whom we want to get confirmation. And to me, as I was saying, in my own cocoon, so to speak, that is the essence of journalism. You'll forgive me with my shades this morning, but I misplaced my glasses since last night, so I had to wear shades last night, and of course this morning it has extended to this morning. But I'm glad that today's Friday, so I'll have a chance to take a look at the a fervent look for these misplaced items. They are misplaced, I'm sure. They're somewhere, or maybe in a car or something like that. But that being as it may, as I said, we would want to, of course, look at issues that we may not have touched. I want to tell you, of course, don't forget that on the 5th of January, we will be at 91.1. We only yesterday we engaged in another milestone towards that inevitability. But the details will be given at the appropriate time. I'm just getting those persons who see the ground report as their daily dose of, let's say, information. I don't want to say entertainment, even though, as I said, built into the program sometimes, as you have what may be called comic relief or a good laugh. But that being as may go, let's go straight, of course, to the headlines. Well, the U.S. military radar helped cops find $171 million drugs stash in Caroni Swamp. Well, and last night, of course, we went into details on that one because I think Mr. Diego Martin is a forensic man on this program, well, this and other platforms, and he did bring it to my attention last night on the corridor, and I had to say, well, it is ironic that here it is that there was skepticism surrounding the use of the deployment of the radar with respect, of course, to the kidnapping. Remember, they said, well, where was the radar when that took place? Suggesting that somehow, it was something that was an exercise in futility. And then the discovery of that large amount of drugs, I think in this case is marijuana. And here it is, the people, when they were asked, because I think there was a survey by one of the traditional medias, they then turned and say, well, they don't think that the radar had anything to do with it. So here it is, they want the radar to have something to do with the kidnapping, right? a situation where the radar was totally unequipped for. That is to say, that people who pretending to be ordinary fishermen, the radar can't determine what was in their mind to go on Monas Island and, of course, kidnap these people. Yet still, they expected that to happen as far as the radar technology is concerned. But you know, the radar working, doing what it is supposed to do, that is to say, to detect drugs and contraband, etc., on the waters and the maritime, what I consider to be assets, not assets, but maritime, natural borders and the spaces of Trinidad and Tobago. And here it is, they are doubtful as to whether or not it achieves. So you really can't please them. So what you do what you have to do. What has happened here, however, and I think that the Honorable Prime Minister has capitalized on it. And I don't want capitalize to be facetious or in any way blowing your own trumpet or taking it. I think she was very modest and realistic, and that is, she said that here it is, of course, the radar, she said, was to treat with matters such as that. And it has functioned in that capacity. In other words, recognizing the soothsayers frivolous, nebulous, nincompoopish, and irrational logic, as I've indicated with the previous example of the kidnapping and people expectations, that the reader will be able to avoid or avoid that. But they don't believe that the reader contributed to, even though it was said officially that that was the case, but they don't believe that the readers contributed to the discovery and the capture of that 171 million drug stash in the Caroni swamp. It can't please them. So what you do, you go ahead and work. Eventually, of course, not even the opposition, not even your opposition will take likely to that reality, to that revelation, to that disclosure, to that development. Because as soon as they say something is wrong and the prime minister and the government says something differently, that different thing is soon ratified by some incident, as is the case here with respect, of course, to the stash of drugs. The radar was there for that. And what has happened here is that in the context of Tobago now, because the radar facility is in Tobago, what has happened now, all those that oppose the TPP, the Tobago People's Party, led by Fali, and of course endorsed by the PDP, yes, here it is, that they call a press conference for the removal, believing that somehow they have the pulse of the people in Tobago, but more importantly, that they could convert that overture into what? Into political stocks, into political currency. Well, the currency has just made a nosedive because the drugs, you cannot dismiss the potency and the significance of $171 million in drugs. Cannot attribute it to the very radar that they said should be what? Should be removed a couple of days ago. Well, I mean, that is pie in the sky. That is wishful thinking. Of course, it will not happen. And of course, lend themselves vulnerable to, of course, the criticism that they're playing the fool, and that they're playing politics with a very serious matter, because Trinidad and Tobago has a serious drug matter, a drug and all of the repercussions and all of the ripples that would include, of course, the deposit and the coming into the country of guns and ammunition, and of course, people trafficking in person, in addition, of course, to laundering in addition to, of course, fueling gun-related criminal behavior, and the drugs themselves fueling its own, what I consider to be ecology of crime, criminality, dependency, chemical dependency, meaning that people who would become addicted to these substances, and therefore creating all kinds of havoc for the society. So, what is common and what is pellucid is that what Kamala Prasad Bisesa, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, UNC Coalition of Interests, what they say that they will do, they do. And what they say, they mean. And what they mean, they say. And eat your heart out, hear them in Tobago and elsewhere. All right? So that's that. Russia, of course, vows to support for Venezuela's sovereignty struggle. Is it a struggle? Sovereignty struggle? Again, that is political, what I consider to be verbal maneuvering. Yeah, it is. To use one linguistic term, it's called semantics. Who is interfering with Venezuela's sovereignty? Without, as we often say on this program, without looking internally as to the developments and the interplay within the borders of Venezuela to get a better understanding as to why it is that all of us in the region and in the Western Hemisphere must be concerned about Venezuela. This is not a sovereignty matter, but it is one that says that here it is, the Maduro administration has captured government there. They are on a dictatorial experiment that has failed and continues to fail, in spite of the fact, ironically, in spite of the fact that they sit on the world's largest reserve, if you want to call that, of oil and gas. And therefore ought to be one of the richest countries in at least the Western Hemisphere. But that is not so. The opposite is the case. Hyperinflation, if you have to go and buy one of them kiss bread, the equivalent in Venezuela, you might have to go with a barrow full of notes that they use there. I don't know if it's Bolivar or some other note, but the fact is that that is the case. And if you carry $1 there, you can imagine the millions of dollars that you could get with the local currency. The fact is that they could hardly buy anything. So you cannot separate what is happening in Venezuela and then travel to sovereignty talk, travel to regime change, travel to a zone of peace agenda without looking at what has happened and is happening and the genesis of these discussions, whether it be that of a zone of peace, whether it be the destabilization of Latin America, the southern, at least the southern American continent, and even the Central American continent, and even the Northern American continent, which comprise fundamentally of Canada and the United States. But the fact of the matter is that what is happening in Venezuela, what has been happening and the antecedent is ignored by those advocates that are talking about sovereignty. And now you have, of course, the Venezuelans, of course, will, like a drowning man, hold on to a straw, any port for a storm. And if you are not conscious of these facts, you may well be misled, as so many have been doing, and deliberately so. I say deliberately so because they avoid what is happening on the ground in Venezuela. And so long as they cannot face and narrate and argue and take a position on what is specifically happening in Venezuela, I say that they are playing the fool, and that they have an agenda that, of course, is not concomitant. It's not in agreement with their public utterances of a zone of peace, of sovereignty for Venezuela, of possible regime change and possible invasion, and all of that has been dominating the headlines. But hardly anybody speaks about what is happening in Venezuela and Venezuela's contribution, the regime there, to the efforts and the elements that will cause the area to be contrary, or should I say, to be experiencing those building blocks that is opposite to a zone of peace. Let's not waste time. Venezuela is its own architect of that. And so long as people are not seeing that and coming with some ideological, what I consider to be mumbo jumbo and hogwash, and America want the oil and this and that and so on, and taking that narrative. The fact of the matter, and even in Venezuela, of course, the regime is regimes, of course, for its own survival, pursuing that course, that narrative. Come on. You gotta be objective, man. Even if you're in a subjective scenario, you gotta be objective. You can hate America as you want. The fact is that what is happening in Venezuela is contributing, of course, to the disquiet and the destabilization of surrounding countries, whether it be Brazil, whether it be Ecuador, whether it be Peru, whether it be Chile, whether it be Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Guyana, Suriname. They have been contributing to the destabilization of the area, and therefore the bellicose language, and the specter of war will be a discussion, will evolve in such an environment. All they have to do is call free and fair elections. It's obvious that the regime will change in that way. We saw it, of course, in the last election, but the regime there believe that it is so ensconced, it is so deeply rooted, and that it commands all of the major institutions of state, including, of course, those that have the potential, because it has the weapons, cohesive force to have the population submissive by the oppression that such an environment, social, economic, and psychological and cultural, usually conjures up and manifests. Right? So I'm not going to be wasting time anybody who think, including, of course, Russia and Cuba and Iran and China and so on, talking about sovereignty in that context, and have over 100,000 of Venezuelan citizens here in Trinidad competing with us here, and we are going through our own economic challenges as a consequence of a government of the past before the 28th of April this year, and ironically, or should I say perniciously, aligning itself with that regime, because it too remains silent on what is happening in Venezuela. It's only this government, this prime minister, had they say vesticular or ovarian tenacity, fortitude, forthrightness to say to Venezuela, you are in essence, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you are in essence the architect of the circumstances that the Caribbean islands, country, the Southern Caribbean, found itself with the presence of the American military might. That's not waste time. And that's where it has to go. That is common sense. Anybody, that's why I dismiss when people talked about the hegemonious agenda of the Americans and of course the Monroe Doctrine and all of that. Venezuela itself has given rise to that. All they had to do is to have free and fair elections, let the process produce the leadership in the country, and everything else will fall into place. I'm not saying it's going to be honky-dory because they have a difficult climb to make in terms of getting back to where they ought to have been. We understand the history and the intent, of course, of the socialist movement and all of that. But you cannot have a socialist movement that is unsustainable or parasiting on other people's efforts. I'm talking about the oil industry there, what Chavez did and all of that, nationalize it and not paying the people, etc. When we nationalize our industry here in Trinidad, and you have to give credit to democracy and the understanding of what is required. There was negotiations, Texaco, etc. And of course, Eric Williams was the man at the helm of Trinidad and Tobago's affair. But they said go and pick up an army that you could, your police and your army, and just go on the people's compound, having of course made their investment and expecting to have a return on it. I just go and take the people thing. No, you have to negotiate to buy. So right now, of course, even in Trinidad, when Philip, I think there's a company called Philip, has a name like Philip, part of it. When Chavez and then took over the people's assets in Venezuela, only because it is located in Venezuela, they went and they take it over. Never compensated them. Never compensated them. So now things have turned and things looking a little more, what I consider to be salubrious for the company. They did, of course, file in the United States asking for the appropriate compensation for the assets that remain there. And when they realized that Trinidad and Tobago would have had some kind of relationship, particularly with the last administration, in terms of irregardless of what is being done in Venezuela, oppressing the people, Trinidad and Tobago's government then remained silent. No, even at the United Nations, seeing it as a sovereign state, see that non-intervention, etc., etc. What sort of bull? Nonsense. And you don't want to mention the fact that the people are migrating out of Venezuela in their millions, over 8 million of them. That in itself symbolizes instability and a potential zone of war, not peace. So they're telling me about. And of course, escalated into Trinidad and up the islands and so on. Maybe a reversal of what, or maybe a parallel to when Columbus had reached the New World in 1492. And he met, of course, the Caribs trailing the Arawaks. I suppose probably is that as they climbed or they went island hopping, so that by the time he reached and stalled that whole process, Caribs were being, of course, cannibals. they halt that process. But by that time, the Arawaks were in the larger islands because they were going up the road, and the larger islands are basically in the northern part of the Caribbean archipelago. And then, of course, they met the Caribs in the smaller islands, including, of course, that of Trinidad, St. Vincent, Grenada, etc., Dominica. Right? So that's a piece of history, but I'm just trying to make the comparison, frankly, about what the reality is and how people can mislead. And I want to tell you this as well, that a man who is saying, in this case, but I prefer to use the term doing because it's much more acceptable and people can identify with it, doing wrong and believe he's doing right, that dangerous man or woman, dangerous. But I think what is probably more dangerous is a person who is doing wrong, know that they're doing wrong, and still pursue. That, to me, is the greater danger. Greater danger. Don't tell me Abdullah and who again? The Emancipation Support Committee fella and others don't know what the reality is in Venezuela and the repercussions here in Trinidad, but they still pursue a course of action. I'm saying that they are stereotypical of the latter category of persons who are doing wrong, know that they are doing wrong, but still pursue it anyway. On the other hand, what you have are people who understands what is required, did an assessment, and on the basis of the knowledge that was just revealed in the context of what is happening in Venezuela, they then tell it as it is, to the chagrin and to the disapprobation of people like Abdullah and they, who want to lead us down a gum tree, a pick a patch, and telling us that is heaven on earth in a pick a patch. They know it full well only one thing could happen to a human being if they find themselves, particularly if they are naked or half naked in a pick a patch. They know. So I don't want the ordinary person who may be listening to these people because you have an affinity or because you have a respect for them. That has nothing to do with common sense and reality. And if you fail to display common sense and reality in your own assessment, then you will be inside of the category of those persons who are associated with wrong and believe that they are doing right and therefore are equally dangerous. But those that are doing wrong or saying wrong in this case and know that they are doing wrong or saying wrong, as in this case, is even more dangerous. But both categories are in the same vessel, so to speak, and is in the same crucible. Let's move on. I thought I should just interject here with respect to that. Andy will join us. He will indicate when he will be coming on. Of course, all of you who are regulars, you know the time frame, you know the numbers and so on. I don't have to regurgitate. I'm just holding on. I'm supposed to have been in an engagement all now, but duty calls, and when one member of the team may not be able to be ready, and then of course another member of the team will have to take over. Don't be surprised if I couldn't make it, that Mikey just show up because that is the kind of commitment we have to you and to the delivery of the information that we know will ultimately develop the change that is required, the attitudinal change, the paradigm shift towards a prosperous, law-abiding, peaceful, progressive Trinidad and Tobago. So Russia is in support of Venezuela for obvious reasons. Birds of feather flock together, so to speak. All right, Roberts predicts TPP sweep in THA elections. Well, of course, none other than Adil Roberts. Last time I had to play him as well because I think, as I said, he reminds me of myself, but just that he's a little more pedantic, meaning that he will go into, if I'm using figures, I will use approximate figures. I will say something like about 5,000, 7,000, so. But he will actually give you the documented or the data figure, and you have to admire him for that, But of course, he has a knack for that, and you have to accept that. But the fact is that it doesn't take away the veracity of what is being said. I suppose a little more detail will suggest more in-depth and more attention paid to, of course, the details. Maybe I should adopt a similar approach, but in the fullness of time. We have very limited time on these programs, and therefore, of course, you don't want to say something to the percentage, to the actual percentage or the actual decimal point or figure. Guyana seized oil tanker was illegally flying our flag. But we did not, of course, in any detail deal with that particular story. So let me just reiterate to what and the genesis of it, and that is to say the United States did in fact, of course, seize a tanker, well known, well marked, well followed, well traced, and it appears from the information that they were taking off their transponder, or they were adjusting it. That is, to track a vessel. You call it a transponder. Yes, that's how a plane has a black box. But of course, in this case, what they have done is interfered with the transponder, so that if they really is in the Caribbean, they say that it make it look as though they are maybe somewhere in the Red Sea or the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah. So that was discovered, and of course, was carrying oil, I think, to some other one of the should I say the associated countries, the countries that would do business with Venezuela. So the oil itself would have been sanctioned oil, and therefore the Americans intercepted. I could imagine how dreaded and pessimistic those who would have been part and parcel of that venture would have felt, because some are saying, for example, the couple that would have been kidnapped, it may well be a circumstance such as that, but that's for another time. The fact is that tanker tried to, of course, camouflage itself to pretend that it is something else, and the Guyanese authorities are saying that we don't know anything about our flag. So they're flying a Guyanese flag, and for obvious reasons. After all, everybody knows that Guyana is the fastest and most rapidly developing country, GDP and otherwise, physically, infrastructurally, even though they have a population less than 1 million people. But they are rapidly, I think, is what they anticipate their GDP growth would be something in the vicinity of 8%, which is one of the highest in the world. And therefore, they could, if somebody adopt that flag on their vessel, then of course, as a tanker, for example, then nobody would be suspicious, according to those who would have been engaged in such a deception. Yes, believe that nobody would notice because, I mean, it's a tanker. Guyana is closely, if not already, up to 1 million barrels a day of oil. So therefore, a tanker flying a Guyanese flag will not be detected easily. Well, they have bust on their average. They take the risk, and now it has materialized. And the Americans have it in their custody, and they will have now to look elsewhere for that oil or for another tanker, as the case may be. And the owners, of course, I'm sure, is in hot waters. Mostly in these days, the owners are anonymous. They do not, of course, show up on any document, their names, etc., or their locations. And of course, you consider that a loss. So usually they have a stockpile of money somewhere. They could, of course, engage in another venture if they so desire. So, so I thought that that was a issue that we did not touch during the course of the week, and therefore, required a little more meat on that skeleton, or that skeletal piece of information. Caribbean experts explore how AI can transform tourism. All right, that speaks for itself. Alexander, more readers needed across Trinidad and Tobago. And let me just read this one because I didn't get a chance to read it, but let me see if I could get into the details of this one. Until Andy presents himself, I indicated to him that I have to be out of here. So I don't know if I guest set up. So I'm talking that on air, but let's see. Alexander, more readers needed across Trinidad and Tobago. Set up here meaning to get stuck in today's, of course, doing today's program. Homeland Security Minister Roger Alexander has defended the recent installation of a radar system in Tobago and says if he had his way, more radars would be installed around the country. But at least on this occasion, people can't fault him for putting his foot in his mouth. Because so many people try to identify him for that, like the time when he blew some air in a bag and then, of course, gave it to them and say, of course, it symbolized certain things. And then, of course, in Parliament, he would say certain things that, of course, some may consider to be unintelligible. But what we know for sure is that he is the minister, and therefore, of course, the UNC has a program to reduce crime, and he is the Homeland Security man, and therefore, of course, we just have to follow because that is what we are. That is what we are saddled with, and of course, when compared to people like Gonzalez and Stuart Young and Dylan, but you know that he is far ahead of these fellas collectively and individually. But let's go as far as his job is concerned. You could say any other thing about him, but what is critical is that he knows his job and he can do his job, and that is what we want for Trinidad and Tobago at this point in time. All right, he made the comment while speaking to journalists outside Parliament on December 9th about the recent kidnapping of businessman Derek Tordier and his wife from their home on Monas Island. Tordier and his wife, Clarabelle, have been missing since December 6th. Kidnappers have demanded $2.5 million for their release. Alexander said technology such as the radar could definitely help protect citizens living down the islands. Yeah, we have to take a stance against that type of behavior because who knows, these persons could have come in the area on a boat and abduct citizens of this good land. Well, again, while he was talking generically, I mean, I could extrapolate. I could see somebody saying, well, because we have said earlier, and it's logical, that if a person pretends to be a fisherman and wanders into Trinidad and Tobago's space waters and to kidnap, it's very unlikely that that a reader will be able to pick them up. But of course, if they have contraband for which the reader might be programmed to detect, but then it's a different story. All right, maybe the reader might pick up, for example, the language that they're speaking, in Spanish and so on. But I don't think that will raise suspicion so as the law enforcement agencies in this country or the Coast Guard to move into action unless there's some definite sign that there is something untoward, and it has to be more physical than anything else. So a stash of drugs, for example, will certainly meet that criteria. But that being as it may, of course, he said it could not be back to business like everything else is normal, given the safety issues facing citizens. We see the same thing happening every day, boats coming in and we don't know. This is why we are trying to strategically organize technology at its best in order to prevent these things from happening, unquote. Alexander suggested there should be multiple radar systems installed around Trinidad and Tobago. Having said that, of course, I had to pause because remember Manning had boasted that you have 365 degrees radar. You had, of course, a blimp in the sky, and therefore crime would have, of course, been subsided. Well, of course, it proved to increase. And what we concluded with that kind of development, and of course, don't forget the amorphous or the elusive OPVs, that because it was never deployed and therefore would have been unsuccessful, but because it was never deployed, just as how the Revenue Authority was never deployed, the PNM can boast that it would have been successful. Let me repeat. I mean, these people are marginal. What they have deployed, right, has failed. The 360 degrees that Manning talked about, they blimp, they scrap it, they land it and they scrap it and sell it, of course, as scrap. I don't know how a balloon could be sold as scrap, but I suppose it may have use to others. So what is scrap for some is a utility for others. But the fact of the matter is that the only time they have some kind of window of success is when they have in mind to do something, and because it was not done and a new government comes into play, they then say it would have been successful. But that which you can palpably, you can tactilely, you can evidently, you can feel, touch, use your senses and your intellect to assess, fail. They don't focus on that at all. Because the logical conclusion is this, that if you failed with the 360 degrees, you failed with the blimp, and what was called then project or operation Anaconda, remember that? All of those things failed. Instead of having a reduction, you had an exponential increase in murders in particular, because that is where you go to measure the level of security and efficaciousness of your security apparatus that is designed to be deployed and to, of course, protect citizens. And you have an exponential increase. But you want to insult our intelligence, as we saw recently with in the debate with respect, of course, to the 2026 budget, 2025-26 national budget. They bring in something that was never tried and tested, and where there appeared to be some level of success, what I consider to be not ephemeral, not limited, but inchoate, halfway. I'm talking about the property tax. They collected some tax and they said, well, listen, that would have been very, very important for Trinidad and Tobago. But the basis on which they brought that tax and all, everything they do, they touch, there is always something that is sinister and something that is not right, is not appropriate, is not efficient to manifest the objective by way of their verbalization or their introduction to the population. Yes, the 360 degrees radar system under Manning was supposed to detect and to avert and to reduce murders. I use murders. I don't want to look at the other serious crimes, but I think murders will resonate with us because it has been increased. And I want to make a point ultimately, but the fact is, it has failed. The blimp has failed. Anaconda has failed. And the many other, of course, schemes for national security under whether it's Manning, whether it's Rowley, whether, of course, is Stuart Young. They cannot escape. They are joint at the hip, joint and several. Yes, they're joint at the hip, almost like Siamese twins, if not more. But the fact is that they have failed. So, in the recent budget, they then say, listen, the Revenue Authority would have brought in, even though there was a debate at the level of skepticism that the opposition then, now in government, but the opposition then had brought to the fore, including, of course, ordinary people like myself. That government and that party having displayed, of course, uncanny ability to get and to undermine independent institutions. You can't trust them. But nonetheless, that doesn't stop them from saying, well, listen, because it wasn't tried, you see, they say, well, listen, the Revenue Authority would have. But then, of course, you may want to criticize me because say, well, all right, well, if you're saying that the Revenue Authority was not tried and therefore is consistent with the other arguments of failure, then the property tax started to collect some money. What do you say, Smith? What do you say, Smith? Of course, I'm creating my own questions and answering it. Just call hypo kafia or something like that. But the fact is that hypo foca or something like that. Anyhow, the point I'm making is that you're gonna ask me, well, listen, well, the property tax shows signs of doing what at least they said that it will do. But there is another flaw in that again. They could never do anything upfront and leveling with the population. You see, based on what they said about property tax during the 2015 general elections, they ought not to have been. They had no moral authority to engage, far less to implement a property tax regime. That's the point I am making. So the credibility and the sincerity, because itself proved to be onerous. Because when the land and building taxes was to be reintroduced by the UNC under the same Hawaii, who is today, of course, governor of the central bank, and he was Minister of Finance, he did indicate that the land and building taxes, what we knew before, you pay $80, $100 where it is, and of course you go to your Inland Revenue Department and you get your receipt for paying your tax for that particular year. But even in that situation, and when Rowley was up and down the place saying that they will never engage in property tax, and that property and the matter of taxes of that nature was already addressed because Hawaii and they are putting that in place. So just saying that when they come into office, they will, of course, look at the land and building taxes. And of course, nobody, because you see, there was the criticism as to why the UNC did not, of course, repeal that piece of legislation when they had the opportunity between 2010 and 2015. But if a man who is the leader of any party, in this case the PNM, we're telling you, listen, Larry, Hawaii, and they have already dealt with the tax matter. So therefore, anybody saying, and those were his words. It's very close, if not paraphrasing, but is in essence that is what it is. He said, listen, it will be dishonest for anybody to say that when any PNM coming into office, meaning him as Prime Minister, that they would engage in property tax. Robert said that Ibisbert was hedging, but Robert took over the podium, took over the mic, and said that. And he talked about the famous Ramadan and all of that. But the PNM will never engage in property tax. And again, we saw when in 2008, 2009, when he was coming up against Manning, he said that not one of his constituents could afford an additional $100 on their tax when Manning had decided, of course, to bring the tax into fruition in that particular budgetary period. He only said so. The point I am making here, and I'm not here, even though, of course, my preference is for the operations and the policies and programs of the present government and the support I give indivisibly to the present Prime Minister. Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa, the UNC and the coalition of interests. But those are the reality. So then, he said that tax will never be implemented. So thus my argument with respect, of course, to the floor, in spite of the fact that property tax might have shown some element of being successful, the fact is that the PNM had no moral or ethical authority to engage and therefore deceive the people. That's the point I am making. So there's always some impediment, some slipshod, some chicanery they engage in order to, of course, get their way, get into office, and then, of course, betray the people. So that's a betrayal. And for those, and I always wanted to get an opportunity, of course, to say this. And for those who were saying that the UNC had the opportunity, I mean, they had a massive mandate at the time to repeal that piece of legislation before, of course, it had to come full circle, and they, of course, do it as they came into office as part of their promise, unlike the PNM, who promised not to implement, but did it. There are 2 points I want to make here with respect to this particular matter before I move on. And one is that if I was the current Prime Minister, leader of the opposition, and Prime Minister who called an election in 2015 at the end of the 2010-2015 term of office of the UNC, and of course the partnership it was called then, and I hear the leader of my competing party, the party most likely would have replaced me, saying that we are not going to, so consistent with my policy as Prime Minister, or let's be more specific, consistent with what Kamala Prasad Bissessa as the Prime Minister at the end of the 2015 and therefore before the general elections then, if you were her, if I was her, I'd be saying, my life, we are on the same, we are on the same trajectory, we're on the same path, and therefore there is no need for me to make that a priority of repealing it. No. That's human nature. And you have bigger fish and other things to treat with. Why would I want to? Because the leader of the party, Rowley, said that they will not engage in property tax. So I've given you, of course, the flaw in that potentially successful initiative, because all the rest have failed. And then you have another one, of course, another one that was never implemented. I'm talking about the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, and they're still telling you that would have succeeded. Against the background of the plethora of things that have failed, that they have been implemented. Yeah, that's the point I am making. So I've defended, of course, the reason why, for the first time probably, why I was Prime Minister then, I would have taken Rowley as his word. Because remember, Rowley was not yet a spent, obnoxious, evil, diabolical, wicked, vindictive element or individual as we experienced between 2015 and up to the 28th of April this year, you know. Remember that? He was a fresh, minted, he was prepared to tackle his boss on the basis of corruption and nepotism. He went into Parliament and let it loose. He gave us all of the inner runnings of the PNM, not knowing that when he would have gotten his opportunity, he then exacerbated. He has now become, of course, the most corrupt Prime Minister, leading, of course, a corrupt team of persons ever. And, of course, he make whatever he was accusing Manning, I'm talking about the deceased Manning as Prime Minister of, look like child's play. Child's play. Child's play. But that was the deception that the deceptive persona that he projected, and the people fell for it. Whilst we were telling them, no, that man is dangerous. That man is engaged, of course, in camouflagery. That man is engaged in if he was a detective, he would have been in incognito. Yeah, incognito. He told them that, but of course they didn't listen, and of course the thing came full circle twice. 2015 and 2020 came, and then of course the 28th of April came, and the people finally realized, just as in Tobago. And the Bible, of course, is replete with instances like this. I mean, Moses had his challenges, his travails, leading the people of Israel from bondage towards the promised land, and he got no end of problems. Well, of course, that is the price that human beings pay collectively for, of course, not being constant and observant as to the dangers of individuals. And I want to say that I am not blaming anybody here. I want to tell you that, because of course the very intelligent people of Germany got tied up too with Hitler. That's all. So who are we? But thank God the 28th of April came and we did what we had to do. So I thought what that's the point. But another point that concerning of the property tax and the position of Hawaii when he was Minister of Finance and under the Kamala Prasad Bisasa administration, by the time 2015, the year 2015 came around when it was time for elections, is this. And again, deviates from the implemented property tax by the PNM under Rowley. and this Churchill. And that is when Hawaii mentioned, according to Rowley, so the records are there, so it could be verified. According to Rowley, when he said that they will revert to the land and building taxes, I think by now we know that there's a vast difference between the land and building and that of the property tax, even though, of course, Imber tried to tell us that it was one and the same as part of their deceptive, of course, agenda as usual. So we know that was inevitable and it was idiosyncratic of these fellas. Sometimes you believe that they are bipolar. Sometimes you believe that they are schizophrenic. Yeah, there are two different personalities. Tell you one thing here and then say something diametrically opposite on another occasion about the same thing. But the point I'm making here is that here it is. Hawaii, according to Rowley, said liability taxes will be returned, but they will start with the industrial owners of the land and building tax regime. And then they will go on to the agriculture, and finally they will graduate to domestic. And that is significant. Significant once again. Because in the Rowley already deceived us by saying that he will not implement property tax. And having implemented property tax against what was delivered and expected of the population, having won the elections in 2020, I should say questionably, and with a further reduced minority. Yeah, I had to say it that way. Because I mean, you get only 23 seats, and you get like if you had a landslide, you get 22 seats, and you get worse. All kinds of things that you're doing, interfering with the president, interfering, of course, with the what? With the Police Service Commission, interfering, of course, with the integrity of the DPP and its department, criticizing that you put out a bill, you put out money for you put out $55 billion on a building on Park Street. Nobody asked you. You didn't communicate with the DPP, but you put it out. And of course, if you drill into it, and I'm sure that the evidence will eventually come out, you'll see some friend or some partner. They love real estate. Of course, the most conspicuous of them all is that of Al-Rari. But the fact of the matter is that here it is. You see a more passionate, a more considerate, a more realistic approach to putting or relieving the ordinary person from the pressures of a one salary that has to spread over all of the things that are commonly known for reasonable existence in a contemporary Trinidad and Tobago and world. So the UNC would start land and building taxes, but with the commercial people. One may say they will pass on the price of it. One may say that the elasticity of demand may not cause it to happen in particular instances, or the amount may be so negligible that there was no need, of course, to burden the consumer. But that is an argument that one can take, but you don't take that because you have to find taxes. Every government has to find taxes to deliver services and goods to the people. But the point I'm making is here it is that they have taken an approach that does not put a burden on the ordinary citizen, the householder, the single salary person. In the case of the property tax, they start with the householder, the single salary. PNM, Rowley and they could have said, let's put that burden on the business people. And of course, the argument will obviously come up that the businessmen will pass on the results or the increase to consumers. But at least the consumer would have had an option to say, listen, I ain't buying again. Of course, depending on the commodity, because if it's something that we use that's a staple. Then, of course, the house of we are entrapped into, of course, purchasing for consumption purposes. I'm talking about for food, but it does not take away the fact that it is much more reasonable and much more logical and much more common sense and much more what I consider to be salubrious, much more humane. Much more humane. That's what we are talking about. And therefore, when they say bluntly that they're going to start with domestic households, then you know how insensitive, how inhumane, and how dangerous, and they clearly turned out to be the existential threat to Trinidad and Tobago in more ways than one. Our economy, our democracy, our trust in government, our ability to, of course, feel like human beings and feel like nationals and feel like contributing citizens, because they try to make us aliens in our own space, in our own country. And then they pile on, of course, the pressure by telling us in their usual deceptive way, and nobody believed them. When, of course, they started to have consultations for the possibility of raising what? Electricity rates and water rates. We know that what would have come out of that. It's just as so, of course, they brought to the parliament, having, of course, sat at the level of cabinet, and bring to the parliament for ratification the increasing in their respective salaries. That is how they operate, did and will operate. They should get no chance. And the little pain, if you want to call it that, the little non-expectations, if you want to call that, of closing down URP, CPEP, etc., for those who were genuine and really, of course, seeing that as some kind of subsistence support for their daily existence. And I of all persons, will know and understand that. I'm living in it. I am broadcasting from right here on George Street. And I understand the pain, and I understand the increase, of course, in petty criminal behavior, etc. But the entire process is one clearly that demands a certain amount of patience, because it could not, the system, the people could not accommodate any longer those elements that would have been exploiting the system. And when you're going home with about $700 a day, going home with 20,000 and 10,000, etc., because they have set up a mechanism that, if to use a sociological term, they have developed a subterranean culture. Subterranean culture. Usually a subterranean culture is a bad and pernicious and ultimately dysfunctional process created by some human beings that want to get more than their fair share. So what is required? Of course, it requires patience. On your part, it requires, of course, creativity. It requires, of course, if you had a spare, let's say, room, and there are people out there before that, you could have carried it, you could have taken care of it, and so on, and leave it empty. You may want, of course, to rent it out. But those who do not have that, They would now have to depend on, and are using some very practical examples that I've seen, friends who may still be working and want, of course, to contribute, or they may, with little savings, and if none at all, still have neighbors who will give a little bit until, of course, the objective of full employment is realized, even without CPEP and URP and these make work programs. Because the philosophy of this government is what? To have decent work. And decent work means, among other things, that you would be able to go to the bank. I know many of you relish that possibility of going to the bank and saying, well, listen, I've just gotten this apartment for $100 by the government, and I want, of course, to go into business, and so I can use it as collateral because I have a 99-year lease. Government can't sell government land, but they could. There's a term they use, lease it, as an agency does, but it's yours essentially. And the bank recognizes that, and therefore they will use that as collateral in order for you to get the loan. Again, of course, there's a pooling of resources, a pooling of understanding, pooling of making certain that people survive. It may even mean shopping less for clothing. It may mean, of course, doing less groceries, or pursuing a course of action based on needs and not on wants. It may mean going less to Kentucky and Royal Castle and so on. I've seen it happen. And of course, going more to the meat shops just on Prince Street here and elsewhere, and looking for bargains on social media and finding themselves there so they could buy 4 or 5 and it will last you for the rest of the month, as the case may be, until something pops up. That is the Stoic approach. That is the existential approach. It's a philosophy that says the latter is that you're a human being and you have to adapt and adjust. And because you're in poverty, it don't mean that you're going to spend all your life in poverty. You have to have a plan, of course, and all of the other ingredients to get out of it. The Stoic approach, of course, is that you engage in minimalism. Minimal. The big lavish meal that you want and go down on the avenue, and so you may cut out some of that. And that is temporary, and especially if you have children, you want to know that you're making the sacrifice for them to enjoy what you would have missed. That's part of it. It depends on your situation. If it is that you believe that, listen, I'm here today, I want to live it up, then you also have that option as well. So there are many ways, of course, to survive this challenge that we have before us. I've been talking on a daily basis to the kids and the young people around. We have gotten some successes in terms of some employment opportunities, but when one compares it to the demand, demand far outstrips supply. But I'm optimistic that as the economy improves, as we get to the oil refinery back on even keel, as investment comes in, as we free up the ease of investment, ecology, platform, if you want to call that. But the fact of the matter is that you are seeing signs. And what is critical is that when the government speaks, whether to the Prime Minister, to any other of its ministers, and I consider myself part of the government, even though I don't have a formal portfolio. But when we speak, therefore, we speak with the highest degree of sincerity, commitment, and dedication, with a vision to ameliorate and to increase not just security in terms of making you comfortable. You can walk the streets and eliminate, of course, the criminal elements. Criminal elements are part of the community. I accept that. In fact, let me tell you this. I have a letter in my possession now. I'm not going to read it because I think it would be disrespectful to the address E people to whom the letter will be sent, and that is to say, the current Chief Justice. And what we observe here, Nelson Street, Duncan Street, Piccadilly Street, and of course, not too far beyond that, the St. Paul Street and St. Joseph Road, etc. So we are at the heart of the concerns which all of us have. We are in the heart of it. So what we have done, we have discovered that, and I want to also remind you of the incident that gave rise to the first SOE under the Gone administration outside the Besson Street police station, when a guy went, of course, to sign his attendance book as dictated by the magistrate as part of his condition of bail. And what transpired, and of course that triggered the possibility, the fear of the police that there will be some bloodbath as a consequence of rival response. I'm saying all of that to say that the letter that I have to the Chief Justice is one that says that we recognize that there are a number of young people, young men in particular, who have court matters. Virtual courts have become the order of the day. There's no physical court per se, and where they can avoid it, physical court, they do, in preference for virtual court. So you stay wherever you are and you can engage the court and make your case. Let me just take this call. President, good night. Good morning, sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Hello? All right, yeah. Hello? Yeah, Andy not here, boy. So I had to go solo. He set me up because I told him I had to go out. And he told me, just come in, you see? So I had to postpone what I had to do. Yeah. So what you want to do? I could put you on my mic here. I could put you on my mic here, and you'll get through. Okay, hold on. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry about that, but call back. I pressed the wrong knob. Call back. I'll put you on my mic, and I think it wouldn't be as... Right, sorry. Let me see if we're gonna get... Kingsley is on the line, and Kingsley, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I hear you clear.
I don't know if we're getting... All right, good, okay. Well, make a contribution. I'm sure, because remember, I am away from head office. I'm away from master control. So let's see if it's going to work. But go ahead, make a contribution.
I know. Yeah.
You're hearing yourself? You're hearing yourself?
Yeah, I hear it clear. I want to make sure it's going through on my sector.
Right, yeah. And they're hearing you. You're hearing you as well. You're hearing you in your sister. Right, good. Go ahead. Well, go ahead then. Then we cook it with oil. Go ahead, yeah.
Yes. Let me say good morning to Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning to the Caribbean. Good morning to the international listeners. And it hurt me to see how much people sell out this country. I'm a brother. to see how they sell out this country. I want to say this, if I was next to the minister of defense of Venezuela, I spit on him. Knowing the history, China belongs to Venezuela. This man needs to apologize to the citizens of this country. I cannot believe that there are people saying this in this country. The only song they want Venezuela to take over here. Because Kamala was the society prime minister of China and Tobago.
Yeah.
Then you saw the proof of that, you know.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it goes without saying, but go ahead, Mike, man, yes.
Because that's what no history said that. No, wait, we get one from he trying to bully us. He trying to scare us. I want to tell them that it's treason. People of this country tell us that it's treason. And we go put in Woodford Square. We go put all in Woodford Square. Like treason to the highest degree. You think that American Venezuela belongs to America, and the people of the government and the opposition will unite to fight for that one, because Venezuela belongs to America. Venezuela belongs to the people of Venezuela, and that's what Trump is trying to do: give back the people of Venezuela, the country. He don't want that country. He's trying to give back the people of Venezuela, the country, because Maduro kidnapped the country, have the country under the dictatorship. I can remember when our media personalities leave there to go with Dr. Rowdy. That's the first time I ever traveled with the Prime Minister of this country, because when Kamala lived in this country, she always carry media in she last from 2015, and now we know she went to India, we know because she used to carry the mainstream media anywhere she going, or she playing to cover and let us see all the business she did. In the last 9 years, Dr. Rowdy and Totem will lead this country. No media personality. We have to wait for it here because of the hiding. And when we have to defense with them, but they can push them out of the room. I can remember that. Push or lock the door because they don't want them to know the dirty deal signing. And I want to hear opposition is saying about the Minister of Defense claiming that Trinidad and Tobago was a part of Venezuela, or Venezuela owned Trinidad and Tobago. It is a disrespect. And it gave us now to stand firm with America. It gave us now to make sure that we have more jet planes and boats and water here, because if it's China, we could pick them up. We could kill them. Because you cannot say nothing. We're not dying now. You think you could believe me? You think I'm a preacher in this country, but I'm ready for them. The same way I'm passionate with Kamala, I'm passionate with Trump, I'm passionate with Trinidad and Tobago first. Because I don't have a passport. I don't want to leave here and go to Africa. I'm a black, proud African man, and I'm black. I'm African and I'm proud. I will not change my color for the world. I'm happy God make me black. I'm so happy God make me black. Because we can have people like them. You know, my country, I born in General Hospital, in Boston General Hospital. Next to the screen, Mother Park. My information, my blood is here. I don't want to go up. I love America. I love Trump policies. But I don't want to go to America. I never go in the embassy for a visa yet. I don't even have a passport. Because I don't want to leave here. I want to go to Africa. Me, Kingsley, I want to go to Africa. Like one, a man tells me, Kingsley, Africa. I said, Africa. I said, no. I said, my ancestors come from Africa. And they meet me here. My ancestors and them, my boys get the soul wherever they are. What make a way for me in this world. But I did not born in Africa. I born in Trinidad. This is my homeland. And when I did, I want to bury in Trinidad and Tobago. Nowhere else in the world I want to bury. I love this country. And I tell them, if the government, my country, call on me to serve and to fight, I am going forward. I'm going to give my life for the rest, because I believe in this country. So I could jump on a plane and go Iraq, and go China, and go Venezuela. I can do no way. I don't know. You can go Osaka. China to Japan, Brooklyn, and go India or Africa. I don't want to add the Trinidad and Tobago. And I believe that none of them who coming out and trying to be politically correct, who trying to be this best of introduction, to say, yes, we want to belong to Venezuela. I want to tell all the right cheese in it. That is treated to the highest degree. And the only song always saying that because the mother of the nation, the queen of the Caribbean in power, if Lord in power, we will never send such a thing. We will never condemn that and things like that. I think that it's more talk shows. I'm going to talk shows. I can ask him, why did I bypass that? How could you bypass that? Because he hate Trump so much. But I don't watch that person as a white man. I watch him as a policy. Trump policy that transgender man mustn't play in women's sports. I support that. That's what I believe. I believe that it must be that you can cast for the world. I don't believe that. I don't believe that when a child reaches 15 years and he believes that or she believes that they have a feminine in them, they must take the step into that boy. You make a step that what make you a female? Why you want to take the step into a boy? What make you a male? Why you want to take the step into a girl? This is madness, and Trump said that allow this. We only have to take boy and girl, woman and man. Nothing else. We're still about transgender. And now we hear that the Minister of Defense trying to tell us, my land, my island, my country, I spit on your body. I spit on your head. I show my life. I take him. I spot. I spit. I want to tell them we must inform on the Minister of Defense because he have a bounty out for either trafficker down. America say either trafficker in a terrorist. That's what America say. And I believe them. We must send them out politically. We must inform them politically. The government of this country must give America information about this whereabouts. Anything we know about Venezuela, we must give America it. Let America go in and give him money. To tell America, it is time to go in there. It is time to clear up. It is time to send them like a Japan them, clear the way for the soldiers to go in. That was a disrespectful statement. I take homage for it. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling disappointed with this country. We are united because the opposition and the government must unite on this one. I know. The government and the opposition must unite on this one and tell the Minister of Defense, mind your business and the way this country belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the citizens, the Indians in this country, and the Africans who the majority. We own this country. This country belongs to us. For over 100 years, we don't hear. This is we land our chain, 1 year, our chain, with the studio, our chain, growing up here. So this come to tell us which country, and that's Spanish country now. I want to tell you this as I go, now people because I'm looking at
I hear you. I hear you, my man. I hear you. You're annoyed. You're annoyed. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, that's cross because don't disrespect my land so by don't come and tell what we come to you. And I want to say again, my family knows. For all of this, who happy the Minister of Defense of Venezuela said that because come like in power, or you want to man come up here and shoot you and kill me, come out get out of power. I tell you, when war starts, look, Ukraine, it's when war starts, there's no typical election. Even the war starts in this country, the constitution say no. We have to see about the war first before we start our election. Ukraine will go on for 3-4 years without calling an election in Ukraine. So all we wishing for that power. So we will get that early election. Right? No. I want to say for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. God continue being that Chile, the guide of this great island of Trinidad and Tobago. And long live Trinidad and Tobago. Long live the people of Trinidad and long live it. Who is need in the books. Thank you very much. I just had to call this morning to say this.
Yeah, man, no problem, man. No problem, man. It's a pleasure because what has happened, people, as you notice, we found a way to get you involved, obviously, and I want to thank Kingsley for that initiative. So what I'm saying is that you could call the number you see across the screen there, 337-6940. As belated as it is, what's the time now? The time is just 27 minutes past the hour 8 o'clock. So we have just about half an hour again. So if you so desire, then of course you can call 337-6940. Not any of the numbers that you would get at Master Control. See that we have found a way, of course, to get your information out there. So I don't have to engage, of course, in this protracted monologue that Andy has, of course, entrapped me into. Yes, I use it strong language, entrapped me into. I told him that I have little appointments and so on, but that's how it is. Commitment is commitment, and we have to go until 9 o'clock, so I have to postpone what I have to do. I should be at a certain part of the country, another part of the country, far away from here, all around now. But that being as it may, I will make the necessary adjustment. That because he will do the same for me. So I will not in any way be angry or angered about that. A pleasant good morning. Welcome. I think it is the corridor. So don't vex with me if I say a pleasant good night. But go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Lennox.
Yeah, good morning to you, my friend.
You hear me clearly?
Yeah, you clearly. And are you hearing yourself clearly? Because it's the first time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, good.
Yeah. You know, the first time I called for a long time, I called because you on the I know you're on the
on the ground report. Yes, this is the ground report. Yes. Okay.
Now, I want to comment on something here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Trying to do the last caller there.
Yeah.
Now, the Venezuela Justice Minister,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw it on Stefan Real Show Breaking Dawn.
Okay.
Right. TNT is Venezuela's territory. And Guyana Essequibo has always been Venezuela's territory. So I'm asking myself this question. Now I know the PNL loves to call press conferences, right?
Yes.
I'm talking about sovereignty.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So I wonder if they will call a press conference with this very matter. Because I want to know how come my country, where I was born, is Venezuela. And as the last caller said, they will have to join up with the government to have a say on this matter. Because I don't think it's the first time that the Venezuelan Justice Minister made a comment. And everybody stayed silently. So I want people like Rowley, Penny, Young, David Abdullah, and this man, the what's the name?
Emancipation Support Committee.
Emancipation man, yeah. And also the human rights society that we have.
Yes. That movement.
The mainstream media should be asking them these questions also. Whether it's CD6 or Guardian media. So I will stop it.
Yes, indeed.
Nothing more responsive.
All right, yes, man. People, so we got an opportunity to engage, so please take advantage of it for the few minutes again that we have. 337-6940, call that number, WhatsApp only. WhatsApp, and of course we will engage. I did realize that the technology existed only because, of course, we set up in such a way where Master Control is where Andy is, and I'm in a different place, and Mikey is in a different place, and all of us synchronizing, we get the job done on a daily basis. But it appears that today we can of course engage in terms of directly through Real Media TT, because we are on the ground report. So if you want to call, and let's test the system and get your 2 pence in. I want to commend, of course, the last two callers, the only two callers so far anyway. Until the very last one, the latter of the two, go to the top of the class, because clearly there seemed to be a sort of insatiable appetite by the Venezuelans to stir controversy with their what they consider to be lowly next door neighbors. They are huge and large in terms of land mass. They have a huge army, over 100,000 persons strong, they say. And they have this, of course, abundance of resources that could be converted into wealth. The only problem is that they have been unable to find a mechanism that will make their potential a reality because of the what I consider fragmentation or the antagonism within and the attempt by a few to dominate the majority, and that in itself, for those who appreciate the concept of democracy, will not countenance or have resisted up to today. So therefore, whilst Maduro may claim to be president, and while people like Rowley and they may see them as president, the fact of the matter is that they are living in a state of trepidation. Their existence as to the leadership role that they are playing is extremely questionable and will not, and has always. You have to call WhatsApp. The person who's calling there, see they calling. Let me take it simple. I will just put it by the mic. We have to improvise today. Pleasant, good morning, Miss Woodbrook.
Hi, good morning, Lennox.
Yes, good morning to you. Yes.
To keep the program going.
Yes,
Only
ma'am.
thing, the volume is very low.
Volume?
But
All right.
Yeah, the volume is
All right,
very low.
Okay,
Yeah. But, we have so many interesting topics this morning that we wanted to vent about.
Yeah, boy.
Lennox, but, it is what it is. Lennox, I was looking at the news last night.
Uh-huh.
I was so upset when I saw these nurses threatening the Minister of Finance for their back pay and saying that they would not be coming to work from the 23rd to the 31st of December, and let the Minister of Finance and his staff go to the hospital to see about the patients. Lennox, this was so disrespectful and so heartless for people who are supposed to be nurses. Lennox, everybody want their money, right? Everybody need money. We cannot live without money, and that is a fact. So I am not disputing the fact that these people need the money. But the thing about it, Lennox, these same people worked they were nurses for the past 10 years. They never once stood up with the steward and all of them. They never once stood up and tell the government that they are supplying an essential service and they should be paid properly and they want the money. They kept quiet for 10 years, right? So why it is you want to bully a government that empower you want all your back now, right? All the thing give all you. Look at COVID. COVID was a serious time when all you put all your life at risk, right? In the thing, you all your biscuit, that was all your reward. You never give all your bonus. You never give all your extra cents. One tin of biscuit and all your smile with all your these people pay them and take it. All you never stood up for what you all should have gotten then. You understand? But now all you want to be bullying this government and want to know your what? Yes, are you going to get all your money? How the hell you only expect money to be prepared and to organize in 8 months before Christmas? Look how much Christmas is all you have with Rowley. What all you get? Nothing, and all you spend Christmas. So why now it's so urgent? Everybody want the money for Christmas. All of you want money for Christmas. And you have to understand what has to be done and what cannot be done. You understand? So then I am hoping that the minister and this government don't be like no marshmallow government. Robbery used to be like a bully and tell them if all you get the money or you lose your work. And they afraid it, so they used to keep quiet. But they feel this government is a soft government, they can walk over them. But you know, I want this government to be, yeah, they humble and things. But because all of them who ain't come to between the 22nd and the 31st, you know, they should be looking for a work in 26. Take the retired nurses, plenty nurses out there not employed. You understand? Take these people to work, and them who want to get a only the government, let them go home. Or let them go Venezuela. They don't say me I belong to Venezuela. You understand? You have to be serious. Put your foot down and let these people know they can't bully this government into nothing. Because you know why? They did not do it for 10 years with the PNM. Just don't do it now. Don't do it now. You understand?
Yes.
Everybody is going to get what they have to get, but it takes time. You understand? Everybody. Another one saying, if it wasn't for the SOE, another one of them unions, they would have gone protest. Or you feel somebody afraid all yeah? Or you feel you could bully this government and you only didn't bully Rowley? Well, let me tell all you this now. We're fixing this place. And everybody has to have respect. You understand? So Lennox, you are doing a good job. I appreciate the fact that you could be there to hold on to the program. And you know, the callers, you know, we always under our ground report.
Yes.
Have a blessed weekend.
Yes.
And let us keep on standing for what is right. And let me tell you, who vex the vex. Because Lennox, what is right is right, and what is wrong is wrong. Everybody going to get the money, but they cannot get the money in 8 months. I wish I had some to get myself for Christmas. But I mean to say, nothing coming, but Christmas will be Christmas. Thank God for life.
Yes,
okay, darling, you have a good day.
Yes, my dear. And you know, I can't help but be amazed with the level of dedication and commitment and creativity. Here it is, of course. I thought I would have had to talk right through until 9 o'clock, but here it is, half an hour. But you see how many people are starting. And two very crucial issues: the question of course, the invasion of Trinidad and Tobago, or the assertion that, of course, Trinidad belongs to Venezuela. And then, of course, the question of the nurses. Let me say quickly, which is addressing the former, which is, of course, is that of that claim. Well, historically and otherwise, the Venezuelans have no claim, right? If anybody to claim Trinidad, is the Carib and Arawaks that has been decimated. They have become almost extinct. And if they are not, they are a fraction of themselves in terms of blood and DNA composition. So let's not waste time with them. And when one looks at the historical development in terms of the Spanish coming because of Christopher Columbus coming to the New World, let me see if this call turns up on the system. Otherwise, I'll have to again use the so it's not coming there. All right. So let me use the handset and put it at the mic. Pleasant good morning. Welcome to the Ground Report.
A pleasant good morning, Mr. Lennox.
Yes. Good morning.
All on the live stream. This is Ann Brown here.
Hi.
I am calling to endorse Ms. Woodbrook's statement.
Okay.
Nobody is going to bully our government into anything.
Right.
These nurses been working 34 patients to one nurse. I never hear them complain. Okay? They never face the government and protest for anything.
Right.
They had their colas, they had everything to get, not one word. And we are saying this morning, no to bullying to our finance minister, Dr. Devindranath Thakur. Yes, you're going to get your money, but everything takes time. Everything takes time. Have a blessed day, Mr. Lennox.
Same to you, my dear. Same to you. Thanks for calling. So we have found a way to, of course, accommodate the callers. Trust that as much you would take advantage of that small window in terms of time and opportunity, but do so. Yes, indeed, of course, those two items miss me. And therefore, of course, you brought it to the fore, and I was just making the historical antecedent or context of the history with respect to Trinidad, Venezuela. Yes, the Spanish came. The Spanish, of course, were only interested in the larger territories, the Americas, Central America, of course, the Yucatan Peninsula, they call it, of course, where they've discovered gold and silver in particular. And they never were interested in the smaller islands, Trinidad, of course, right up to Cuba. And so they settled on the larger parcels of land or pieces of land, now called, of course, Central and South America in particular, of which Venezuela is a part. That is the historical context. In other words, they would have met the original people here, the Aborigines, the what is called today the first people, and Trinidad and Tobago. Well, of course, there was a concept at the time to get the British and the Dutch first, then the French, and then the British came into the New World as well as a European country, and they formed that concept because the Pope was ruling at the time. Those of you who know your West Indian history, the Pope was ruling at the time, and he divided the New World into two, between Portugal and Spain, because they were the two powers in Europe at the time, through a treaty called the Treaty of Tordesillas. Tordesillas, yes. And he divided up, of course. That is why in Brazil, you see that they speak up to today, the major language is Portuguese. That is because of that historical, and we're talking about way back when, 1492, when Columbus came and so on. But to cut a long story short, Trinidad is where it is today. So no Spanish descendant could claim Trinidad, first and foremost. Any descendant has to be, of course, those those nations, those Aborigines that would have been wiped out, right? But of course, the British came using, of course, the concept of there can be no possession without occupation. That was the concept they used at the time. And then, of course, they disassociated themselves with the Pope as well. And then, thus, of course, you would have had what is called the English Catholic now, and gave, of course, the politicians there, the kings and the royal families and so on, to now venture into the New World. So, of course, thus Trinidad, Tobago, and all of the islands were settled by non-Spanish speaking, except, of course, with a few exceptions. Portuguese are talking about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, of course, the Dominican Republic, all of these countries, and of course, Jamaica. Why am I saying Jamaica? Cuba was also settled by the Spanish. So, and that came down the centuries. And today we have, of course, Trinidad and Tobago now being part of the heritage of the British Empire or British colonialism. But of course, it's a lot of changing of hands and so on over the years. So it was important to say that. So historically, I don't know where Maduro and they will get the notion that somehow Trinidad belonged to Venezuela. Of course, the geologists and those persons who study the geographers and so on, who study maps and land masses and so on, would naturally say, coming out from what is called Pangea, there was one mass of land, and then it split up and you form, of course, the various continents and so on. Well, at one time, it was Trinidad, from when you look at the geography and the geology, where you would see that it was once joined to that part of Venezuela that juts into the beginnings of the northern range from the west in Trinidad. But the people occupation and the governance and the evolution of the societies totally different. And it's on that basis that we form what is called, and we have developed what is called sovereignty. We call places countries, we call places domains, we call places citizenship, and all of that came as a consequence. So there is no basis whatsoever for Venezuela to be making that claim at this time. I suppose it is pure political bantering as far as I'm concerned. Bantering always means that it's just talk because you have a hole in your face. So leave it there. But with respect, of course, to the teachers, sorry, why am I saying that? But with respect to the nurses, I want to say that first and foremost, the nurses are prohibited from protest. They are part of what is called that special group of workers that can't protest. So let's get that clear. They are part of what is called the essential services. So the threat is veiled threat. But the fact that they have the audacity, whether they have trade union representative or not, is at the hem of it or encouraging it, is irrelevant. The fact is that that is the law, that is the rule. But the other thing, of course, is obviously the elephant in the room is why? Well, negotiations took place between the PSA and the chief personnel officer. But the health sector has a unique relationship as far as workers are concerned. Yeah, unique. So when one expected that all public servants will benefit from the 10% agreement reached, the RHAs, which was of course part and parcel of a process to divide up the health sector into different parts called RHAs, regional health authorities. When that came to fruition, there were several options on the card, and one was to take your severance and then reapply and get back into the system. The other was that you can be transferred and still maintain your position as a civil servant, but working in the RHAs. And there's another category where the RHAs themselves would have, of course, recruited staffing. So there are three categories essentially there. So those persons who did not fall into the latter and the other category before the first one, in other words, before the ones that would have transferred with all their services to the RHA and still be civil servants, they are the ones inside of that system that is to benefit from the 10% immediately as a consequence of the negotiations by Felicia and head of the trade union and that of the CPO. The other two categories, those who took their severance and then, of course, were re-employed by the RHAs, and those who the RHAs employed independently to augment or to satisfy their manpower needs, they are the ones that cannot benefit from that 10%. However, their negotiations have fallen to be addressed as well, but is a different mechanism because the RHAs have to get involved. Right? So I want to make it clear for members of the public who don't understand what is not just at stake, but some of the complications in the making a general statement, because those who went over to the RHAs with their full status as a civil servant, as a PSA member, they have nothing to worry about. They are taking their monies. Of course, all of them are nurses in the same fraternity, and therefore they will sympathize with each other. But the reality is that the other two categories, those who were re-employed, having been, of course, having taken their retirement or their severance from the system itself, from the government, the general system, as a civil servant, are now working in the RHAs, and the RHAs recruit independently. They recruit people, or they recruited staff independent of everything else. They they will not benefit from the 10%, one, and two, their negotiations, I think, would start, I think, subsequently, maybe next year. All right? So let's get the public to understand what is happening here. So those who are rabble-rousing and those who are threatening, of course, boycott and let the minister come and man the various facilities, I think they are more engaged in what I consider to be excited talk, hoping to get a cowardice response. I agree with Ms. Woodbrook that the government, there's a process, and the government must take take the course, both in terms of the legal, and I would advise, of course, all of them, whether you are to benefit from the 10% because you transferred all your services to the RHA as a civil servant and part of the PSA, because the PSA, they still remain those who have taken their severance and then re-employed in the RHAs, and those who are employed with the RHA, I think most of them are still members of the PSA. So Felicia still has to go and negotiate for them, but it has to be at a different time. All right? Because they are not civil servants in the strictest sense of the word. So I hope that puts to rest those persons who are a bit anxious that everybody will down tools and so on. And at the same time, there's a legal impediment, a legal constraint, and that is they are deemed as essential workers and cannot strike. Right? Not that if they want to withdraw their service, they can find ways of doing it. But strictly speaking, it will be illegal. Strictly speaking. All right, so I thought that was important. I know that some people might have given me chance to explain that before the call, because I'm sure that they would have realized that we found a way to at least get your two-piece in. And I want to thank, of course, those two callers, that 3 or 4 callers that did find a way and take advantage of the situation to present that, because that was something that we did not ventilate in any detail and maybe did not arise during the course of the week, but certainly has arisen by the turn of the night or the turn of today, by the time today reached. All right. That being as, of course, don't forget the number to call 3376940. Only for today. Andy is out. Let me just check. Let me make a check at the time again. It seems as though I'm on my own, so I had to cut off for myself as well. All right, we have about 5 more minutes, so we can take a couple more calls if you are so inclined. But okay, I think yes, let's go straight to the line. Let's go straight to the line. President, good morning. Welcome to the corridor. Oh boy, welcome to the ground report.
Dr. Lennox.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't stay too long, but I want to commend you, man. You see that commentary there with the PSA?
Uh-huh.
What's up for the class?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
What's up for the class? This is why I give you that. Doctor, you deserve that thing.
Many people say so. Many people say that, but there are some who matters have not yet discovered it for one reason or another. But in the fullness of time, as I always say, ability is ability.
Yeah, so I believe talking and mother breast will understand what you're trying to say.
I hear you, my friend.
Right?
Yes.
I'll see you
On the corridor. Yes. On Saturday, though. On Saturday. Today's Friday.
Yeah, it's after you have to elaborate on more.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Take care, my friend.
Same to you, and have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful weekend until we meet on Saturday. Yes, indeed. Of course, we just have about 3 more minutes. So if you're so inclined, of course, you can, of course, communicate with us at this point in time. Andy is unavoidably, clearly, I have to say, absent. And of course, I was only here for he told me just start the program. Yes, he told me I just start the program. He coming in because he had some things to do. But suppose I don't believe that it would have been deliberate. If we really had the chance, he would have, because that's the relationship we have. But clearly, I found myself in this situation, so I think the 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 legal mind will say that I became entrapped. I had no choice. I'm in the Hobson's choice, no choice, and then, therefore I have to continue until around, well, until 9 o'clock, when the program will have come officially to an end. Let me see if it is coming on. This call is coming on the system or on the phone. All right, let me take the phone. Whichever way it comes, we'll take it. Pleasant, good morning. Welcome to the
Morning, Mr.
ground report. Yes, go ahead.
Morning, Mr.
Good morning.
I'm calling from San Fernando Hospital.
Yeah, go ahead.
I went for a CT scan. I
Uh-huh.
had the blood test weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I reached the CT scan, the 25, they told me they put it off. They cancel my appointment.
Uh-huh.
But they're shooting about money. A big strong red man and about 3 women. Cancel
boy.
my money and talk about the patients had to suffer the consequences.
Wow.
And then call me up now and put off my appointment. I cancer.
Oh,
6
shit.
months now I waited for this appointment. When I get the appointment,
threatening my country and stating that Trinidad belongs to them.
Yes.
I want to send out a message for whoever is hearing. If Maduro and his cohorts ever take God out this thought, I think or anything in Trinidad, he would be trapped. And the Venezuelans, my Venezuelan friends in Miami, are very, very worried about that. They are so scared and hoping that he does not take God out, so they're thinking about their family in Venezuela, because Trump is going to wipe them out. Trump is going to wipe out the whole of Venezuela. And China, they have no answer for the United States. Who Venezuela owns is probably part of the CNM. That's the clue. He owns that. So I just want to mention that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. That's the only thing they can own. Something that is amorphous, that they can't touch, feel, and really has no value. The PNF, yeah.
All we to go and dance for him like the one in Vessel who got my soul.
Yes.
And the person, those are the people that he owns. He don't own Trinidad, you know?
Yes.
So I just wanted to mention that to you all. Anyway, tell Andy that end that project that you spoke about. All right,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much.
so to you and my loving people in Trinidad, God bless you all. And my uncle, he got our back. He got our back. All right.
All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the program, people. It was wonderful doing it, and of course, we discovered certain things that you could, of course, make some calls from this side, so that when this happens, if it happens at all, but I think it would hardly have an opportunity so to do, because when we go to 91.1 Talk City, we will be physically there together. We look in a particular way, the set and all of that. Right, so we don't want to, of course, discontinue the very professional look that we normally would engage, and therefore attract your attention because of that being a minor part, apart from the content and the nature and level of the discussions that we would usually engage in. Of course, as I said, Andy was unable to be with us this morning. This is, yes, the ground report, yes, but carried by yours truly. I want to say, of course, have a wonderful rest of the day. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see each other, of course, on Monday. Andy, Mikey, and myself, we like to say, even though Mikey has gone, of course, to, I would say, greener pastures, but certainly have taken on another dimension. Let me put it that way. You know, to see when people die, they're in a different dimension. So I want to say he has not died, but he's in a different dimension. And of course, pretty soon we will be joining him there, not in our capacities as members of the board of that entity, but certainly as the persons who are delivering as part of the delivery mechanism of that entity, that media entity owned by the state. What again, of course, tonight, no corridor transformation. Of course, I'll be in my favorite watering hole, so to speak, Spargos, yes. And you have a wonderful rest of the day. Let me see if I can end with a little Christmassy. Now that now that I know that we probably could have it done, let me see if I could share with you some Christmassy material. Hopefully, make sure that is a soca parang, so we don't infringe any yeah, right. So we will not infringe any. Yeah.
Auntie Carrie and I have gone to all she family because of an incident that happened to she. Early Christmas morning, apparently she gets. As long as she let she will not forget. Make a shout, take on with us. Make a new great, take on with us. Like Johnny Walker, take on with us. In a toilet paper, take on with us. I love fashion, I love the color, but I know where I want to see that color. I love color, I love the
Yes, indeed, of course. You have a wonderful one. God bless. Bye bye.
Why I singing and I dancing and I enjoy the dance. Them caranderos was knocking on our plan. Looking around the house to see what we could take. It's already on our whole kind of make us spin. Make on the